Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I think, yeah, we can start now. Well, I'm happy to talk about my hobby after the talk, but like, let's talk about something more serious. So, who have heard of CRA? Yes, some of you. Okay, so yeah, what it is. So I will tell you what it is in a bit. And also, by the way, this is actually not the first time I'm giving this talk. This talk was actually prepared by Deb Nicholson, the executive director of the Python Software Foundation. We work together very closely for things that are Python related. And so this, the first time we gave this talk is at EuroPython. But today, I'm driving this solo, so so please be supportive. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, I would like to put on the disclaimer that I'm not a lawyer. So this talk is generally about how CRA will affect the Python community and open source community. So if you, for example, you're a decision maker in your company, please don't make expensive business decisions according to what I have said, like in this talk or my previous talks about CRA. CRA could have like real and maybe expensive, responsibility for companies. So this is just like an idea of like what may or may not change in our open source community, and how, as a Pythonister, you can be aware and be prepared for what changes may come. So first of all, what is CRA? Was that, like, you may have heard of these three letters, but it means Cyber Resilient Act. So something related to cybersecurity is a European legislation. So it's proposed, actually has been quite a while. It's proposed in the fall of 2022, so it's more than a year now. So throughout the year, it received a lot of like input from the open source community, including the Python Software Foundation, us. Finally, after a lot of like communication and revision, the hopefully final version has been passed earlier this year in the European Parliament. So, but does it mean that like, okay, now we have to do whatever like CRA tells us to do? No, we still have some time, because it still needs to be adopted by the council in in the future. There's no like solid time, like the deadline and things like that. But as people who may have seen how things work in the past, like it may take around like 3 to 5 years for the formal adoption. So of course, like we're talking about European Parliament, EU Parliament. So like we're talking about CRA's European legislation. So like a lot of European legislation is aimed to promote and protect the European industry. So, for example, if you buy a kettle or buy appliances in the EU countries, you will see the EC mark. Means that like, oh, this is probably safe to use. It's not like something you bought in whatever like country that you don't know who is like making it, and it may explode or something like that. So yeah, so it's kind of like that. And now we're talking about software. Of course, things could be slightly different. Also, when we talk about open source, I think, other than us who are like in a tech industry, or like, someone who is like maybe not working as, a developer, they may have a misconception that like open source is like a beneficial thing for US companies, like big tech companies, and like they're doing all this like fancy stuff. And so that's why like it takes so long. It takes like a lot of communication. So now the final version has overcome this thinking. So now it's something that is less scary. So Python Software Foundation and many other like open source organizations, we have been working together to make sure the CRA, now the final version is not having a chilling effect on the open source community, open source software. The original text is a bit, we found it a bit problematic, because it conflates hosting and offering of the code for free as the act of like selling software. So so if you are selling something, of course, the logical way to think of it is like, oh, you have the liability. That adds a lot of financial liability to potentially, in the original text, to people who are just providing code for free. So However, the current, hopefully, like the final version of the text, now there's a new term and new idea that has created. It's called open source steward. So what does it mean? It actually means that is an entity, a legal entity to be exact, that provide the code for free. So that makes some kind of like separation between providing code and software for free from selling the software. So for open source steward, there's like least obligation because we're working different, just like someone who is selling a very expensive piece of software. So that's kind of a idea that is like more in our favor. So for example, like Python Software Foundation, we are a open source non-profit foundation. So we are part of like those who fall into the open source steward scope. But also there's other foundations as well, for example, Rust Software Foundation, Eclipse Foundation, Apache Foundation, Software Foundation, and many others. So now this final text has crisp understanding of how open source work, and it kind of gives this like non-profits for open source a way to to have their own responsibility, but different from profit making companies and that like entities who sell code. So this actually separates the development and supply. So it's a bit hard to like always draw the line. For example, there are entities that do both of them. For example, GitHub. So GitHub, is a place that we all find out the open source project there and things. So they provide a lot of like the public repository. Those code are provided mainly for free. So lots of those repository will have a license that's like open source license. So it's free. So that kind of is become the development part of the open source code. But then at the same time, some company they may use GitHub or use GitHub Action, pay tier of GitHub Action or Copilot, that kind of pay service. Then that become like GitHub is the supplier for those companies that uses all these like pay tier things. So so GitHub can be like doing both. That also like apply to other companies like Red Hat, all these others as well. So this is, I would say, is like a choose your own adventure chart, but like, you can use this chart to kind of figure out what you're doing on, let's say on GitHub or GitLab, or like what you're doing for the open source code. So which one are you falling into? Do you have the like legal obligation as someone who's selling the code that you have to fulfill all the things that has been required by the CRA? Or are you open source steward? Or are you out of the scope, so you are off the hook? Someone won't sue you just because you write some code on GitHub, So that's a very useful chart for that. So for us, especially like Python Software Foundation, we fall into the open source steward scope. So what we do is like we are kind of the so we are the trademark holder of Python. And so we have some responsibility, and we also we support the development of CPython and PyPI. So that means that we also have some obligation, but of course not the full CRA obligation. So first of all, the open source steward must have a public cybersecurity policy. Also, we have to be able to be responsive to instance and vulnerability reports. So we actually are doing those, and I will explain what we have right now, how you can get those reports and stuff like that. So we are already on the way to get full compliance. So don't worry that maybe one day I can't use Python at work. So hopefully we won't come to that because we are getting ready, and so we are trying to so CPython we are already on the way. For PyPI, the packages on PyPI, we are also figuring out what we can do to smooth the way for those people who maintain those packages as well. So, first of all, if your company is using Python, so CRA will actually could affect you because like you are, let's say you are selling a product that is written in Python, so then you are not an open source steward because you're selling something, and like so you will have to fall into the CRA standard. You have to like have those obligation for you to be responsible for. So as a open source foundation, what we do is like we will do our part and trying to make things easier. We are happy to like have communication and work with our users to see how like we can get to this standard and like try to do things better. So like we are a Python community, right? Like we're just talking about the last talk we talked about open source and like we are a community. So we are doing this together actually. Like we are figuring things out together, but not just like Python, but also we are like I said before, we're working with other foundations. We're trying to like figure this out together. So it's like we are like using the spirit of open source. We are contributing, trying to get our software ecosystem better. So for the Python Software Foundation, now we have this like two, I would say like they are like knights in the silver armor. So we have hired Seth Larson on the left here with the Python jumper, and Mike Fidda. So and these two gentlemen here is our security expert in Python Software Foundation. We hired Seth not because of CRA, it's because like there was some like open source security issues in the past, and we want to avoid that. So luckily we have Alpha Omega, another nonprofit organization, give us funding to support our work to hire Seth. And then like later we also got funding to hire Mike because PyPI, we have a lot of Python packages over there. So being the work of maintaining it and also handling all the reports of spam, bad actors, like name squatters, like all these issues are very hands-on. Like we need someone to be there to be responsible and help us to deal with those. So that's why we have Mike. So we are now doing good. So and not just that, and like as of last year September, it's almost a year ago. So CPython finally like become an official CNA, or in longer term is like a CVE numbering authority. So what does it mean? I will explain CVE in a bit, but like it means that what we can do is that we are more hands-on when like there are reports of vulnerabilities. We can like get the report to be out like faster, and like the discussion will be more exact, and we can resolve the issue faster. So so CVE is like common vulnerability and exposure. So it's a security issue. So so there like is being able to handle CVE is actually part of the obligation that open source steward need to do. So right now it's already that there's already a way that we have set it up, and that we could do that. We can handle the report, and that's we are ready for that. So let's talk about Python company. So if your company, if you are using, let's say, like Python or Python library, and again like you're selling something, you're selling your products, then of course like you have to be up to the standard, and don't be scared working with open source. But we like as a Python Software Foundation, we're happy to work with our users and see like how we could like get ready for that. They're also like not just cyber resilient act, but there's also other legislation. There's also like new things coming up, so that's why all of us work together, like different foundations, so including, like I mentioned before, Apache Software Foundations, Blender Foundations, OpenSSL Software Foundation, PHP Foundation, and Rust Foundation, Eclipse Foundation. So we are working together to kind of see, how we can, have some standard across the industry to like also have the best practice when it comes to cybersecurity. So one of the entities that bring us together and work closely with us is the Open Forum Europe. They are based in Brussels. With their help, so there's a lot of like communication, lead by them to have the communication with the EU Parliament members. So they are not just working on CRA, they're also working on other European policy projects, like EU policy topics. Like, for example, now we have the Product Liability Act, so it's not something new, but it's going to like have some new text about softwares. There's also the standard essential patent. So again, like having something that is patent is not new, but for software, the definition may be different. So all these topics are like policy topics that could affect open source softwares. Another thing that, we work together to help to talk about policies and standard is the Open Policy Alliance. So PSF is a founding member of the Open Policy Alliance. So it's not just limited to EU. We also, work on US policy matters. For example, there's like a new proposed legislation called CRA, a lot of acronyms. So this is all like, about cyber instance reporting and things like that. So there are more and more cyber security related regulations coming, and then we are getting ready for that. So as a Python community, so like I'm an individual, I just use Python, so what do I do? What does it mean for me? So for individuals, these are the things that you could do to get ready. It's like, for example, if you're like in your company, you get a culture of like more security aware. For example, have a champion in your team to handle all this like security best practices and configuration of using some tools to help security. If you're a project maintainer, I know there are some of you here. Python Software Foundation, again, like we are working on PyPI, so we are figuring out like how to support project maintainers. For example, maybe there are some tooling that would be coming up to be used for cybersecurity, or like some reporting system for vulnerabilities, and also how to support projects, because like sometimes maintainers, life situation change, they may have to step down. So we don't want the project to be abandoned. So who is going to there's a sessions of maintaining the project and everything. We are trying to see how we can help, and we are open to all these conversations. Another thing is that, please stay in touch about, all the vulnerability and security alerts and issues. Of course, like I told you about, like the reporting, we are doing that. So there are also blog posts about what we are doing to increase security. Also, our champion, Seth, is happy to talk to you. So that's his email, so you can email him. So yeah, just follow us and see what's going on with the latest security updates. The last thing, you can sign up for getting all these security alerts. I personally have signed up, so occasionally I will get those alerts. So you can sign up for the security announce mailing list at python.org. So you can look it up and then found it on our website and sign up for that. And also, like, if you want it to be a API machine readable format, you don't want the mailing list is not very machine readable, then you can also use some vulnerability database like open source vulnerability format. So that's like a thing that got published to the advisory database. So last thing, how do you support the PSF? Well, in short, security work is very, very expensive. And if you are a company that, like, for example, like Bloomberg or some companies that like using Python heavily, you want to, nourish the open source community, you want to, help us to maintain the community, please talk to us. We are very happy, just drop us an email, or you can come talk to me. I'm very happy to, share what we are doing. And also, the sponsors of Python, actually, they are the community's friend, and they get the best Python developers in the community, so yay. So stay connected, please. I'm very happy to talk with you. Deb is also very happy to talk with you. I can, link you with her, and she can talk to you more about how to support the PSF. So that's the end. So you can see my, social handle is there as well, and the other one is Deb's social handle. So, find us, and happy to chat more. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cheuk. Are there any questions? And if there are, don't forget to say your name first before you ask. Don't be shy.
So no question for CRA?
I think nobody's using Python. That was
no one's using Python?
Nobody's using Python, yeah. So they don't have.
Yeah, or you want to ask a question about the flower arrangement?
No, there's a question.
I just wanted to ask what. Hi, I'm Lucas. By the way. Hi. Sorry if I missed it, but I would be interested in what the main points of CRA are, because I'm completely unfamiliar with it.
Yes, that's a very good question. So, like the kettle example I explained to you before, when you buy something like a product, electronic in the EU country, you want it to be safe, right? So there are regulations to make sure like everything that got sold in the EU countries are safe. So they will have the EC mark over there. You see that it's like, okay, this is a safe thing. It doesn't have toxic things inside. It won't explode. So you're safe to use it. So CRA is trying to do similar thing, but for software. So when a consumer uses software, they want to make sure that the EU consumer are using software that are secure. So what means that like if you're a company, if you provide sell a software to you, a EU citizen, but then like there's a security issue and then your data got stolen or something like that, or or it kind of, or if you are a EU company and then you use another software by another company and then there's a security issue that makes you lose money, then you can potentially, ask the provider of that piece of software that have security issues to be responsible for your loss. So that's the idea. Of course, again, I'm not a lawyer. It's just something in a nutshell to for us normal people to understand what's going on. But yeah, does that answer your question? Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Hi. So thank you for your informative talk. So I had a question specifically about. Oh, my name is Menno. Hello. So I have kind of a question because I've seen some software licenses around for open source that it just use it as your own responsibility or something. Couldn't that also? I mean, I'm a big fan of security, but if you're an open source software developer, can't you just use that as a workaround?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question, because that's something that someone have suggested. It's like, oh, but I've already claimed that I'm not responsible in the license, and why am I still liable? So this is a separate thing. Means that for example, if you give, let's say handsome candy to someone on the street for free, and you say I don't care about these candies, and I'm not responsible for anything that you eat this candy, but then that person eat the candy and unfortunately die because they're poison in the candy. It doesn't mean that you are not a killer and you are not a murderer and you won't be arrested, right? So this kind of that's a very extreme case, but it's very similar thing. That's a different kind of liability. So that disclaimer license, open source license thing, doesn't make you exempt from it. But don't worry about it, because you have to look at this chart. So if you are someone who just I contribute to open source because I love to give back to the community, or where's the chat? Oh, here. So I want to contribute to open source for the community, or I create this pet project, but I'm just making it for fun. It's just a game. People can play on their computer. Those things probably doesn't fall into any probably will be out of scope. But again, I'm not a lawyer. But again, people don't have to worry too much about it. So for individuals who are not doing open source as a a business activity, usually you will be fine. But again, like if you have question about what you do for your company, consult your company lawyer. They would have better idea than me what's going on, and they can advise you. Yeah.
You can share your Instagram handle.
Hi, I'm Mahi. Thank you for your talk. I was wondering what, in your opinion, what will be the impact on the open source world, because it's still, even though as a contributor you will not be covered, won't it make some people maybe scared of publishing a library? Or
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. Like, I think at the beginning, like in 2022, the community, I was at FOSDEM, the community also have very, shock and was like, oh, this doesn't work, this will, stop all the open source developing and it would destroy the open source community. But like after all this work, thanks to like OFE leading all this work together with all the, organizations, now the final text will have, is, well, I can't say there's no negative effect, but there will be, compared to the original one, have way less negative effect on open source community. And, but, so that's why I'm doing this. I'm giving talks. I'm trying to tell people, don't worry about CRA. You may have heard scary thing about it, but, it may not be what you think it is. We should just be, look at it in a more closely and see what's going on. Of course, consult legal expert about what's going on and things. So, yeah, I'm trying to get people to be aware so they won't be too scared about it. And I hope that all of you, when you talk to your colleague about it, and you can also try to bring this message over.
Yeah. Last question.
Hello, my name is Adriana. Thank you for the talk. Sorry, I arrived late. It's not exactly a question. Yeah, well, maybe I think I'm discovering Python and I'm discovering open source. And I have the impression as a developer is already a challenge to become a contributor. And so it feels like me that this adds another challenge, which is not fair, because as a developer, kind of my responsibility to do it even in my daily basis work, but we are not honestly prepared to that. And so in your knowledge, there is something like, what do you do for your workshop on Python, a workshop to introduce nicely to cyber sensibilizations, to cyber security, to newbies?
Yeah, so I would say that so far, open source community have very good software development practices. If you have contributed to open source project, you know that for example, I contributed to NumFOCUS recently, and the test was you need 100% test coverage. We have very, very good practices. All this formatting is very rigorous. We have per page and all this stuff. So I hope, it's just my personal speculation, that cybersecurity good cybersecurity practices will become another good practice that open source developer adopt when they develop the open source software. And I think that I won't see it as a huge challenge for people contributing to open source. We are all learning all the time. There's always some new practice to make you develop better software, benefit more people. So yeah, so I would think that this is if you look at it positively, it could be something that the community can adopt and make things better. Yeah.
Thank you. Another round of applause, please.